Welcome, everyone. I'm Dana Peaver, decision expert, author, speaker, and podcast host. You're listening to the Wildly Courageous Women podcast. More women than ever are faced with challenging decisions on a regular basis. I am so privileged to sit down with them to discuss exactly what they've gone through and how they've come out the other side, realizing their wildest dreams. I'm sure you'll be able to relate. And don't forget to stay to the end to take advantage of my latest free gift. Let's get started. Welcome to the Wildly Courageous Women podcast. I'm Dana Peaver, decision expert. And as always, we're here talking about decisions that have been made in our lives that were courageous or impactful or changed the course of our life, or even one that we wish we could go back on. So today I have Gina Simpson as my guest. Gina, thanks so much for joining me.
It's my honor to be here with you. So excited.
Good. Just a little bit about Gina. She is the founder of Soluna Strategies, which is a professional development company. But more exciting than that, she's an entrepreneur, she's an educator, she's an inspirer, she's a disruptor, she's a creator of confidence. There's so many ways I could describe Gina. I'm just so thankful that you're here today with me, Gina. And just a little history about us and decision making. The reason Gina and I met was because we both made the fabulous decision to attend Hootie Fest in Cancun, Mexico, back in January of 2022. And, that's where we met, and we've never looked back. Wasn't that a great decision?
Sometimes you just know when you meet a person who, like, you're just my people. When you connect, you can't deny it. And yes, the friendship has been fantastic.
Well, thank you. And so much so that my most recent book, I actually asked Gina to write the foreword for me. So The Decision to Live, Gina has a permanent part in my heart and my book. So a friendship forged from great decision making, right?
You made me cry.
Oh, you're so cute. So cute. So before we get started, I want to remind listeners that I ask all my guests what their most favorite app is on their phone outside of social media. So you're going to want to stay to the end to see what Gina has to say, because we get some really great suggestions. And also you'll want to stay to the end to get access to my latest freebie. So Gina, we're going to take this step by step today.
Sure.
We're going to talk about a decision that you've made in your life, and I want you to set the stage for us as it relates to the decision that you've so graciously offered to share with us today. So,
okay,
I'd like you to start by telling us a little bit about the background, how old you were, where you were living, if you were living with anybody, all of those parameters. Set the stage for us.
Sure. I was living here in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, Roll Tide. And I was the CEO of Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports, which was the tourism agency for our city. Was working a lot, living here with my husband. We've been married for quite some time. We had a 7-year-old daughter. And so I was just working, living the dream, a very visible position that I was in, one that was very demanding, but also a whole lot of fun. So spending a lot of time working and being a mom as much as I could.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Great. I think I have a good picture in my head of what that looked like. Tell me a little bit about housing. Like, were you living in a house, an apartment? Did you own? Did you rent? What was kind of your status at the time?
I was living in the big house on the hill next to the country club, with my pool out back and my large manicured yard, and living what most people think of as the dream.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, great. So now tell us a little bit more about the circumstances. What decision were you faced with?
How to move forward in trying to grow my family in terms of children.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there
more? I was faced with adoption, so to move it back just a little bit, I and not to jump ahead on your questions, but
Okay.
the I had a really, really hard time on my fertility journey. Most women, I think, just grow up thinking, oh, I'm going to get married, I'm going to have children, and it just happens. But for some of us, it's just not that easy. And for me, it just wasn't that easy. And so I had one beautiful daughter. She is still just the love of my life and my world. So I had one beautiful daughter, but my husband and I both come from very large families, and I just could not imagine having only one child. Um, and as I was thinking about that, it was just like I always wanted at least two. I never wanted to leave my daughter alone. I was older when I decided to have children, and I realized that as an older parent, I would exit their lives sooner than I wanted to, just by terms of age.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to be sure that my daughter wasn't alone. Because my journey was so difficult, I had made it to a point in my life where I knew that biologically I could not have children anymore. So I
Okay.
had to make the decision on how was I going to add to my family. And long story short, was I going to pursue adoption or not?
Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah.
So your daughter is 7 at the time.
Yeah.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. So in terms of the conversations that you were having with your husband, walk me through those. What did you guys discuss?
So just so you know, it was never really a question for me whether or not I was comfortable with adoption. Adoption was something that just it never crossed my mind that I shouldn't. And that's probably just a great virtue of my family in that I have a sister who had adopted two children.
Mhm.
I had a brother who had married someone who had an existing son, and he had become part of our family. So accepting people in as family to me was very normal. That, however, was not as easy for my husband.
Okay.
So having the conversation with him about bringing in another child is, it was hard for him at first. And it's easy to understand why that's hard, why you would bring someone in, give them your name, raise them as your own child when technically they're not your blood. And when you say that out loud, it sounds huge. Um, and so we had just a lot of conversations about, what does that really mean for him? It was more a decision, and not like that was hard for him.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like from a mindset perspective, you knew that this was something that you at least wanted to investigate, at least
Yes.
get the ball rolling in terms of what that could potentially look like for your family. One
Right.
of the stumbling blocks maybe was his perspective on the whole
Sure.
idea of adoption.
Sure. Yes. And also thinking about what it did mean for a daughter. Now, a lot of things that people don't understand when it comes to adoption is when you proceed with adoption, you have a
Mhm.
lot of hard decisions to make.
Okay.
Um, Decisions about what is the bare minimum in health that you would accept from a child. What is there, are there any boundaries with gender, with ethnicity, with race? What will you accept into your family? It's really hard to think about and hard decisions. It's
Mhm.
not just will I or won't I, but if I do, then what?
Wow. I
Yeah.
never really considered that those are options
Mhm.
you had. So, Gina, without asking too much, would you be willing to share with us some of the decisions that you had made, kind of the parameters or boundaries that you had decided on, and whether or not you were consistent with your husband in what those boundaries would look like?
Um, sure. Um, you have to decide, first of all, do you mind if the child is not the same race as you?
Mhm.
Now, when you say that, it's like, sure, I don't care what race it is. And in my heart, I don't care. But there are other things that go into that decision that people don't understand. And what the decision is like, well, that child's going to look different from everyone else in in his or her family. So what is that child going to feel like as the outsider? So
Right.
you have to think about that. You have to think about what that means, because I had an existing daughter. What does that mean for her? Um, are we willing and ready to get all the looks when everybody's trying to figure out what's going on when these are your children?
Right.
Those are all the things that we had to think about when it came to race.
Hmm.
Ultimately, for me, it didn't matter. Like, I just love people. I don't think there's any divide. We look different, but I don't think there's anything that's any different. So I just love people. So that was not an issue for me. I will say that we wanted a healthy child.
Okay.
I was older. I have gone through some family trauma where I didn't want to revisit that trauma with another sick child. So we did say yes, we wanted the child to be healthy.
Okay.
As best you can, you have to decide like how much alcohol, smoking, drug abuse from the birth mom are you willing to accept? And the truth is, you don't know.
Right.
You don't know. So, I mean, those are some of the decisions you have to make. We ultimately decided we wanted to be able to have a birth mom that really had taken as good a care of herself as we could hope for,
Okay.
understanding that an adoption story from the birth mom's perspective is usually never a good story.
Agreed.
Yeah.
That's a little heavy
Yeah.
when you put it that way. So when you look at um that time in your life, how much time did you spend determining whether or not you would move forward?
Ooh, so I knew in February of 2000, I wrote this down so that I could remember. I'm not a years person. I knew in February of 2015 that I could no longer have kids.
Okay.
And after that, my husband and I started having discussions, and it probably took 6 months to make the decision of whether or not we were going to pursue adoption. It took
Okay.
6 months.
Okay. And so who else did you talk to? Obviously you talked to your husband about it. I'm curious as to if there were any conversations with your daughter, and then who else in your circle did you have conversations with?
Yes, we definitely talked to our daughter. We were very open with her about the whole process, and she was part of the whole process because this affected her life. This was going to be her sibling, and
Mhm.
she's as intelligent as she could be at 7 years old. She had really good insight. She had really good things to say. It was fun to include her in some of it. It was hard on some other things to include her. But so yeah, we definitely talked to her. Adoption was pretty normal in my family, at least with my siblings. So I had that support in those conversations. But we also had some other friends who had recently adopted, taking a different process than we took, but had recently adopted, and we talked to them about like which pathways they had taken and different ways that they had approached it. So I would say definitely family and friends. We had some
Okay,
really good support to reach out to.
great.
Yeah.
So I know the answer, but our listeners don't. What did you ultimately decide to do?
I'm gonna cry. We went for
Awesome.
it.
Yes. Yes. So tell me a little bit more about, making that ultimate decision. How did you feel, and what was the defining moment, if there was one?
um, I really can't remember the moment where it was like, yes, we're going for it. It feels like a lifetime ago now.
Mhm.
Um, I know that I'd done a lot of homework, I'm a very determined person. And that
Really?
no. And I'm a very persistent person. And I had a goal. And I will say this sounds a bit cold, but when we finally made the decision, like I just went into Gina mode and it was like, okay, we've got something to do. There's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of research to be done. And I just went into business mode. Like, how am I going to make this happen? So there were a lot of things that had to happen. I had to decide how we were going to approach adoption. I was an older mother, so that meant international adoption was not really a good option for me. It also meant that as an older mom, it was probably going to take longer for me to be able to be matched with someone for an adoption.
Okay.
So because of that, we decided not to limit it. A lot of adoptions are limited to the state that you live in because every state has different adoption laws.
Mm-hmm.
So we chose a law firm out of California to help us who was able to put forth adoptions in all 50 states.
So
And so
nationally. Okay.
in hopes that that would speed up the process for us as, to hopefully be the wonderful chosen people to be able to adopt.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really kind of how we approached it from there. Now, once you go in, then you have to do like what I call it going on the market. And like you have to do this whole portfolio, like where it's your family pictures. Like we had to do a whole photo shoot. And then you have to say all these things about yourself that like it's like going on the market where you're trying to tell somebody why they should choose you and why you'll be a good parent to their child and why you'll be a good match. So you have to put together your whole marketing portfolio and go on the market. And
Like a
that
big
took a
sales
minute.
pitch almost, right?
It really is. It really is. And so we did all of that. And then once you do all of that, that took quite a while. I would say we went on the market. That sounds so terrible to say. We went on the market, I think we finally went live probably in November
Of
of
2015.
15. We
Okay.
went live. And there was a whole lot of hurry up and wait. So it was all this busy work of trying to make the decision of like getting everything done, of going live. And then it's nothing.
Crickets.
Nothing. Because what happens then is the birth moms come to the agencies and then they scan the portfolios and try to pick people. And so then it's just a matter of, does anybody pick you? Yeah,
It feels so vulnerable.
it is. It is. And I'm going to say the infertility emotional roller coaster that I traveled
Mm-hmm.
was just that, a roller coaster. The adoption roller coaster is just as real. It's just as real. And I don't think people realize that. They're like, oh, you can't have kids, just adopt. Can I be clear? There is no such thing as just adopt. That's not how it works. You know, you go through all of this to like present yourself in the best possible fashion, hoping someone chooses you. But then we didn't get contacted until then. I'm like, it was almost, I wrote the dates down because, like I said, it feels like a lifetime ago. Um, I take that back. We went live in February of 2016.
Oh, so almost a year.
So I knew in February of 2015, it was no longer an option for me.
Right.
After the whole process and everything, we went live in February of 16. So a year later, we did not get contacted with a possible match until November.
Okay. So November of 2016.
So, yeah. So from February to November, we sat. Yeah. And there's really not a lot you can do to speed up the process. You just hope you get chosen,
Wow.
So that roller coaster of waiting, just waiting. Um, yeah, it's real.
So during that time, is there any contact with the agency? Is there any opportunity to, all I can think of is like spruce up your resume,
You know, yes, we did get a monthly call from them
Okay.
where they were very, supporting and telling us how many views we got. And it's like, I don't even know if I want to know how many views I got because that just tells me how many people didn't choose me. I mean, it's like, oh yay, somebody's looking at me. Well then what? So like I said, it's an emotional roller coaster. It's hard. It's hard. And yes, they were very supportive. They were great. But you just sit there, and there is no such thing as really spruce up because you don't know your target market. Like, what are you going to say? What are you going to add?
Right. Right.
There's
Okay.
really nothing to change. Um, so
November
November,
2016. I'm so
we
excited. Tell me what happened.
gosh, girl, I don't even know. I know you don't know this story, so this is all going to hit you like boom. And we were contacted, and it was a really quick process. The baby was due like right before Christmas. The baby was in a state that was about a 10-hour drive away. And that meant like we packed up our family and we traveled to this state 10 hours away. And we set up Christmas in a hotel room, me and my husband and my now 8-year-old daughter. And we set up Christmas and we waited for the birth of the baby. We went to the hospital. It was sat in the waiting room with the people who were affiliated with the birth mom
Mhm.
and waited while she was in labor. She went into labor. I went in. I was in the delivery room when a beautiful baby boy was born. And I was able to keep him for 24 hours in the hospital. And we have pictures. My daughter met him. She held him, my husband. And 24 hours later, the birth mom decided she had changed her mind.
Whew. I've got the shivers.
Yeah. So we
Oof.
drove 10 hours home with an empty car seat.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And you know, the hard part of that is you can't be angry. How can you be angry with a birth mom for deciding to keep her baby?
Yeah,
you know? Um,
exactly.
yeah.
Wow. Wow.
And
No, I
that happens more often than people talk about.
well, and my question was going to be like when you got a notification in like close to Christmas, like how permit like is that a yes and or is there still a vetting process or and my question was going to be is there still potential that it doesn't happen and obviously the answer to that
Always,
is yes.
always. There's always potential that it won't happen. Um, Always.
Okay.
Yeah. So that one did not happen.
Wow.
um, and
Okay.
I hope he's great. I hope he's great. I hope she's great. I hope they're fantastic. But that
Mm-hmm.
one didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
So we came home and went back on the market and waited again. um, there's a lot of, like I said, the roller coaster's real. We were contacted again in June that we had been chosen.
So this is June 2017.
Yeah,
Okay.
in June 2017. And we're like, okay. But this time I was a lot more wise. This time I knew a lot more questions to ask about the birth mom and her mindset and things that were happening.
Okay.
And so I will say I approached this one a lot more cautiously, a lot more. I learned a lot. um, and in going into this one, this was going to be about another 10-hour drive.
Okay.
And there was always something about this one, and I'm a big believer in my instinct and my gut. And there was just always something about this one that just didn't feel right. And it never, although she chose us and like we talked and we were going through like having conversations during her pregnancy. So we were contacted in June and she wasn't due till December. So we were going to be in touch the whole time.
Wow.
Um, Something was just, you could just tell something was just not right with the story. So we were very cautious with this opportunity.
Okay.
So much so that just some things started happening. I could just tell the birth mother, which I'm not judging in the least, but I could just tell she just was not making some rational statements or some rational decisions or some things just didn't make sense.
Okay.
So we had really gotten to the point. So this was in June. And I will tell you this, this was my big decision, not whether or not it was adoption. That was always a yes for me. This was my big decision. My big decision was that if we had not been presented with a viable opportunity that had happened by the time that I turned 45, then we were going to say no. We were
Okay.
going to stop. And the reason for that was not that I was not healthy or I didn't want another child. It was just like, it's not fair to a child to bring them into your life at the age of 45 and they're a newborn or anything after that if you don't feel like you're going to be here long enough to help them have a successful life.
Okay.
So for me, like 45 was a pretty solid age to say, okay, I take really good care of myself and I'm like super healthy. But at 45, by the time I got to my birthday, if it hadn't worked out, we were going to stop.
Okay. And how close were we at this point?
Well, the Friday night before my 45th birthday, which was on a Tuesday, my husband and I sat on the back porch and I cried and cried. And I told him, I said, we both know that this opportunity that we're in the middle of is not going to go through. Like, we both know. And he was like, yeah, no, we can both tell it's not going to go through. And so I'm looking at you saying right now that after my birthday on Tuesday, we'll call the adoption agency and tell them we're done. Said, but I'm going to contact them tomorrow and let them know that we don't want this opportunity anymore, that we've backed out. And we cried and cried, or I cried and cried anyway. He just kind of held my hand while I cried.
Mm-hmm.
But Dana, that was my big decision. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's heartbreaking.
And so I contacted them on Saturday and said, no, we're out. Opened me back up. I had a few more days, right? So
Right.
put us
Right.
back on the market.
3 days.
Yeah. I said, put us back on the market. On the Monday, we got the call that we've been chosen by another family.
So the day before your 45th birthday.
Yes.
Whew.
And that was in September. My birthday is September 10th. For anyone watching this, if you want to send me a gift, I take all gifts gladly. So that was the day before my birthday. And the baby was due Halloween. So we had about 6 weeks.
Wow.
Yes. And I just knew this was it. I just knew. Like everything in my heart told me this is it.
Wow.
Or I wouldn't have gotten the call that quickly. Being on the
Right.
market just a few days, the day before my birthday, I knew this was it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I had no idea, Gina, that
I know.
so many decisions had been made in your life up to the point where you now are as it
Yeah.
relates to your family, right? So for our listeners, can you share with them, the outcome of this beautiful story?
Oh my God, yes. Mary Ella Simpson was born on November 4th, 2017. We were in the delivery room when she was born. My husband cut the umbilical cord, and she has been our wonderful daughter ever since. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. And I know, in the past we've touched on this topic, and I have always expressed to you how brave and courageous I feel making a decision to adopt is. And I, after hearing your story today, I feel even more so that way. And I really admire the courage it took for you to be as selfless as you have been in opening up a whole new world for your daughter. So I love you for that.
Oh, thank you. And, thank you for calling me selfless. But as I've told you, people tell us all the time, she's so lucky to have you. That's just like, that always blows me away when people say that because we're so lucky to have her. And the truth is, it doesn't feel selfless. It feels selfish because I get to have her and I get to love her. And she gets to be my daughter, and it's a big week. I mean, she's 5 years old now, and she's magnificent. She graduates from preschool tomorrow night, and and I'm freaking out. And then she's got a dance recital this weekend. But all of it feels like I just wanted a bigger family. I wanted 2 children, and it doesn't feel courageous to me. It feels selfish, but I just am so thrilled that we have her. I'm just
Well, I'm here telling you otherwise.
well,
That
all of my friends are crazy. Like they think I'm crazy for like having a newborn at 45. And they're like, what are you doing? Because like I have friends who I graduated high school with who have grandchildren that are older than her, and I'm like, I said, about it. I don't even think about it. Um, I just do everything I can to stay young for her. We're for both my girls.
I know you do, and I watch you do that, and I applaud you. And most of the time, I just sit here in awe of you. So
Oh.
thank you for sharing your story today. I feel like we could continue this conversation, and I'm sure there have been some other decisions that you've had to make as it relates to, being a mom that perhaps we can share on another podcast episode if you're so inclined. So,
Of course.
all
I've
right.
a lot to share.
All right. So Gina, the one final question that I promised that we'd get to is, short of any social media apps on your phone. And, I always joke and say the decision Smith, that's a must on your phone in terms of
It's on my phone. It's on my phone.
Yes. So take those off. So you can't use those. What is your most favorite app on your phone?
I am such a nerd. I'm such a nerd. And you're going to laugh, but my most favorite app is my weather app.
Your weather app. That's hilarious.
I'm such a nerd. But AccuWeather, like I am so intrigued with meteorology and everything about the weather, about the moon phases, the sunsets and sunrises, tides, when the space station's going to come over, eclipses. I'm such a nerd that.
All right. I'll give you
my
that.
weather app.
I'll give you that, because one of my most favorite apps, short of what I've already talked about, is dictionary.com. So, right? Okay. That's why we're kindred spirits for sure.
We are.
All right.
Oh my gosh.
So Gina, I want to thank you so much for sharing your time and your stories with me today. And to all of our listeners out there, thank you for joining us. If you're ready to realize your wildest dreams, just like Gina's doing, come and join us in the Wildly Courageous Women Facebook group, where we're changing people's lives one brave decision at a time. I'm Dana Peaver. Until next time, make great decisions and do life fun. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Wildly Courageous Women. Keep listening to hear more stories of these incredible women realizing their wildest dreams. If you have a story to tell about a decision that you've made that has impacted your life, I'd love to feature you as a guest. Please get in touch, and don't forget to grab my latest gift by clicking below. I'm Dana Peaver. As always, make great decisions and do life fun.